Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Arlau Jolly. This is Figure Drawing Basics, part 112. And this is where I left off yesterday. So, the week continues with more hand drawings. Throughout the week, I was just showing you guys how you could use the block form as a way of constructing the hand and many other features like the head, even the body. So I'm going to continue on with that. This is something that I started yesterday. I didn't really get too far into it, but I was using the same approach for pretty much all the other examples, which is starting out with a sketch, something that gives you just like a general idea of like how big it's going to be and the parameters, basically. So you don't want it to be too wide or too long in certain areas. You don't want it to be too long for the fingers or like too wide for the palm. So just a quick sketch gives you that idea. If you're working off of a reference especially, it's very useful. Hey Jarn 1 asks, are you an art teacher? I was. It was something that I was doing for years. But after the pandemic, actually, there was a lot that changed since then. And I'm kind of trying to focus more on just building my own work. But yes, I was. I really did enjoy it. I think it was a lot of great moments, having to teach young kids how to have them express themselves using this medium, and seeing them get excited about learning new material and just growing as people through the process. Also, there were a lot of kids that I actually taught who were underprivileged, like these were like non-for-profit schools, and it was great to see that they had some sort of outlet. Some of them were coming from pretty shitty environments, and it was evident during the times that I would have like parents actually come in. It was pretty obvious what kind of environment they were in. So it was really nice to offer them something different from that, and to offer them guidance when they needed it. Yarn 1 says, I was looking at your videos and the other night I said this guy knows his stuff. Well, thanks. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it takes a lot of time and practice. And I believe pretty much anybody who devotes themselves to this really can achieve the same thing. And pretty much to anything else, whether it's music, if you decide to venture into music instead, or writing, whatever medium you are interested in, it all requires a lot of dedication. And I think a lot of people are deterred from it because of like the stigma that comes from society. This idea that being an artist is something that you're gifted with, or that when you touch like a certain instrument, or when you touch any sort of medium, that you should be able to just amazingly like reproduce whatever it is that you have in your mind. And that's not true. I think everybody, including people who are very quick about it, let's just say, had to take time to understand and dedicate themselves to it. It's not a magic wand. It's something that they've developed mainly because they really enjoyed it, and because they enjoyed it, they spend so much time in developing it, which ended up really having beneficial results. Unlike your typical jobs where the idea of a reward is a maybe, if you get yourself a job somewhere and they're like, oh, if you work hard, you'll get places or whatever. a lot of times it really doesn't get anywhere. A lot of times people spend all that time doing it and they're in the same position they were a year ago. Unlike what it's like when it comes to like picking up a hobby or picking up something that you're interested in, whether it's music or illustration. The time that you put in, you actually do get rewarded for it. You just see the rewards. It's evident. You're able to draw faster. You're able to draw what you like. Really, you get to really collect the fruit of your labor. So I highly encourage anybody to really dedicate themselves to it, and they're bound to see some great results. Yarn says, I'm excited to get to know you and art, but life didn't bless me with having a large attention span. I love drawing and painting. It helps me distress. That's great, man. That's great that you have that. Or woman, I'm not really sure. It's great that you have that, but I think that attention span is something you train yourself. It's something that you cultivate. It's not something that comes to you, because a lot of us, and I think this really has to do with, as we grow older, when we're young, we really like to just spend our energy, to run around, do whatever, see all sorts of things, do all sorts of things. There's this like level of excitement. And sometimes people don't come down from that, or they don't teach themselves how to focus. And that really requires like psychological self-discipline. Like, you have to talk to yourself and say, I have to, no matter what, sit down and get this. If it takes me 5 tries, I'm going to do it. If it takes me 6 tries, I'm going to do it. And just like reading, just like writing, it's something that you acquire through practice. Eventually, after practicing over and over and over again, to focus, to give your attention, you start to lengthen it. It starts to get better and better. I don't think it's something that just happens. A lot of people wait for that moment, or they think it's something that you acquire as you get older. Just so happens like one day you wake up and boom, your attention, it doesn't work that way. It's something that really, the way you get better at it as you get older is because you have more years of practicing that skill, that ability, more years of just conditioning yourself, disciplining yourself to be able to do it. And with that comes the reward, the reward of being able to learn things, being able to catch on to things quicker, and expanding your horizon, basically expanding your horizon, whether it's art, whether it's any sort of art, or even if it's academics. It's the same sort of necessary discipline. Like, you really have to be able to do it. But this doesn't only go out to yarn. This goes out pretty much to everybody. It's something that I believe in. That's something that I taught students as well, because a lot of them in a school that I was in, they also were just like, their parents weren't spending time with them. Their parents weren't focusing on them. A lot of these kids, they weren't able to read properly. Like, they were reading at first or second grade level when they were much older. And it was upsetting to see it. It was upsetting to see, because you kind of notice like, well, they're bound to fall into like a terrible category in life or in society, basically, and they're about to really go further down and down if they don't develop these skills. They're incredibly vital on being able to learn, communicate properly, all that stuff. And people, they're not going to want to hire somebody who isn't able to communicate properly, or doesn't know like certain things that are essential, or doesn't have the ability to like focus on certain things. So it was really important, and I really felt like, as a teacher, that's something that we have to develop. So I spent a lot of times with these kids, like individually. I was fortunate enough to actually have like an assistant present so that they could actually talk to other students while I'm helping one that's like falling behind lessons or isn't really grasping the material. But it was definitely challenging. It's hard to say like, everybody learned and everybody was really good. There were definitely kids who picked up on that stuff, and that was like the reward. And there were kids who didn't care to, so there's very difficult to get everybody to join in. But if I can help like 4 or 5, 6 or 10 students out of the 30, or 15 students out of the 30, that's great. That's already a step forward. And some of them learn to express themselves better, because a lot of times they're, especially in their home life or just their environment, they feel anxious, or they're being categorized and kind of like casted aside, like, oh, well, it's more or less likely this person's really going to get anywhere, and they have this, that, and the other, and they're just kind of like casted aside. But the moment I started focusing and giving them the opportunity to express themselves and encouraging them, as opposed to just kind of pushing them off to the side, they started to feel more capable. They started to notice like, hey, I'm not as awful as people think, or I'm not as bad at this as people would assume. And in turn, they started to really be vocal, express themselves, open up, and it was great to see. It was really, really rewarding. I miss it sometimes, but I do feel like I want to focus more on personal projects, and improving, getting better, that sort of thing. So yeah, just this, just going back to this drawing here, it's past that point of the beginning. Like, it's not at that beginning stage. This is more of like, I'm going to say the third stage of drawing, where you've already established the parameters, you already established how big it's going to be, you made sure that it's proportionate, that the pose is well rendered, and it's just beautifying the image. You're just spending time trying to make it look better and better. Really focusing on as many details as you could possibly get, because again, this working from a reference, let's just say, the best thing about it is that the material is there for you, and you just have to focus as much as possible, not only to get the drawing down, not only to have a really good drawing at the end, but to also train your hand to be able to make all sorts of lines. There's a reason why people starting out, if you ask them to draw a hand, they kind of draw popsicle sticks, or they draw like incredibly simplified versions of what you would tell them to draw. And that's because their hand isn't flexible enough to be able to capture, or they don't, and rather, not or, and they don't have that visual library developed in order to reference, okay, well, here, this is a part where there's a curve right here, it dips in, and because of this this area right here, there's going to be a little bit of an indentation and a bump, so like that visual library, especially like, okay, let's say the fingers here, like in this pose, there's going to be this bump right here to indicate like the knuckle of the thumb, and so on and so forth. And that you only gain through practicing and drawing over and over and over again and paying attention to those details. There's been times actually where in class there was some people who were like, well, they did a pretty good drawing. I'm going to say they did excellent drawing. But they were just like, well, I don't know what else to do. They come to a place where they think there's nothing else to be done. Like, it's so well done. But I think that no matter what, there's always opportunities for you to capture more. There's always opportunities to learn more. And that really depends on how much you focus on the lines, how much you focus on the little details, and adjusting those things a little bit here and there. I think part of it also came from the fact that they really enjoyed the results of their drawing and they didn't want to ruin it. So I don't think it was so much that they just didn't know what else to draw. I think it was just part of them was scared. They were like, I don't want to go in, start making more adjustments and putting in more details, because right now it looks pretty good. And if I make the wrong adjustments, it's going to ruin it. And that's, I get that. That's something that I absolutely remember as I was like learning to draw, having that fear. Like now, I know I'm going to do that. I know that that's going to come in my drawings. There's going to be a point where I am going to make the mistake and it might not look great. But because I've developed the ability to get past that, not being shackled by those kind of thoughts and just being okay with making mistakes, being okay with making things look ugly, or having things turn out to be ugly, and knowing that I'm going to push past it anyways. I'm going to always keep on pushing until I get the results that I want. Jarn 1 says, if I pick up my pencil right now, I won't stop or sleep till I see what's on my mind. That's excellent. That's the mentality you want to always have. That's the drive, basically. Not being totally consumed by like the results, but also just, having the drive to tell yourself like, hey, I'm going to get better. I'm going to really push things past my comfort zone. And that will always bring results. And that's something that's necessary, I think, no matter what level you are, whether you're intermediate, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. That's something that I think is always necessary. There's been artists that I've seen, actually, like I've gone to Comic-Con, and I still remember this, like, I went to Comic-Con a while back, and there were artists that were sitting at tables and they were doing pretty good. It wasn't like they were beginners and they were just trying to get some sort of attention or something, but they were drawing some stuff in sketchbooks and I was looking over and they were so simplified. The person, like, granted, they could be doing it to save themselves time, but it wasn't like there was a line of people there, but I think part of it had to do with them being kind of satisfied where they were, that they felt like there's nothing more for me to do. It's kind of that same approach that I was talking about with the student who was just like, I don't know what else to do. I don't see anything else that I could do with it. So it's not just with intermediates, it's also with people who are advanced. They come to a point where they don't really want to push themselves past that, and that their work reflects that. Their work just kind of shows that it hasn't really grown or improved or has gotten to the next level. Yarn1 says, obsessed with drawing and pasting the same object over and over and over again. Painting the same object over and over and over again. That's also a great way to do it. Is there something that you're doing specifically? Like, is there a subject that you're focusing on? Is it like anatomy, or is it just something that caught your eye? And that's how I learned, actually. Like the same thing that you're doing. There were at the time when I was growing up, I really loved watching Looney Tunes. The way that they were animated. This was before there were all these greedy networks that cut the budget all the time and lowered the quality of animations like you're seeing now. They really appreciated the art, and the way that the artists drew those cartoons. I loved it. I would sit there and I would just draw the same character over and over and over and over again until I got it as close as possible to the original. I used to do that with like Ninja Turtles. I saw Ninja Turtles and I was like, oh, that's so cool. How do I do that? Or how do I get to that place? And I would draw them over and over and over again. And then I noticed how, if I wanted to, like, let's say I went to school and I didn't have the reference near me, it was at home, I didn't bring it with me, but because I was doing it over and over and over again, I was able to just do it from my memory. So there were points where I was bored, I wasn't really interested in what was going on. I would just sit and draw it from memory, and instantly I was like, oh, this is great, this is how I'm gonna get a lot better. And I would sit and like when I would get home, I would draw something else new over and over and over again, so that when I would go to school, I could go and sit down and like do it again from memory. That was pretty cool. I had some good times. Tiny little details here. Of course, I'm drawing it a lot smaller than I should be. And I think the other thing when it comes to like motivating yourself is just doing it. There are certain things that we do that we know we must do, like brushing our teeth, right? Like we have to do that. That's something that's absolutely necessary. And we don't sit there debating on whether we should do it or not. It's just something that we do, right? So to get really good at drawing, you have to approach it in that same manner. You just have to sit and do it. You can't think about it. You can't rationalize it. You can't be like, do I feel motivated? Do I really? You just do it. And what you'll notice is if you do enjoy the process, if you do enjoy drawing, that you'll get into it. It's just having to get over that very first hump, which is sitting down and doing it. Getting into the mode of drawing. And this happens every day. I'm going to say for me, it's every day. It's an everyday thing. I don't rationalize it. I don't think about it. I'm not like, do I feel motivated? Do I, is that drive there today? Or, maybe I'll do it later or something. I just sit and do it. And instantly, I get so into it, I'm like, I should be getting up even earlier and doing this. I should be doing this longer, more hours. So the motivation really comes in once you're in the thick of it. I don't think, whereas before when I was younger, it used to be in sparks. Like I would be like, oh, today I feel like I really want to sit down and draw. Like today I really feel motivated. I feel good about it. I have this idea that I want to come across. you know, all that stuff starts to pour in. Then I sit down and I draw for like good 6, 7, 8 hours, if not longer. But then the next day, I would be like, well, that feeling isn't really there, you know. And that prevented me from really excelling as fast as I could, faster than I could have, you know, or faster than I did, rather. So that's my advice to pretty much anybody who is learning to draw, is just do it. Okay, I'm not going to spend way more time on this one, even though I am enjoying it. It is pretty cool. I'm going to move on to the next hand example. And just to briefly talk about, you know, hands in general, there's a lot to them. You know, I think learning and getting really good at them is incredibly beneficial. They're very expressive. There's a lot that could be told, you know, just from the presence of hands. You could tell the gender, you could tell the age, you know, there's so much emotional expression coming from them, and symbolical, you know, just all those things are present. So I think it's very important to get good at them. You know, sometimes people spend a lot of time and they focus a lot on let's say, the face, you know, or features on the face. But then when it comes down to the hands, they're kind of hiding it. Like you would see some of these drawings and really detailed muscles, you know, they really got down the anatomy. But when it comes to the hands, the fingers are weird. The perspective on the fingers are off, or the nails. Even like the nails don't make any sense in comparison to the position of the fingers. There are all these things. So it really, what I'm getting at is that they're all important. Everything is kind of important. So there isn't really any shortcut there, you know, to take in order to make your image look better. All right, I'm going to do, let's do another example. So I'm starting out using big shapes. Once again, like, they come to the rescue. Incredibly useful, very useful approach to the beginning of your drawing. And then once that's there, I could start defining things a little bit better. Paying attention to the curvature of the fingers. As I mentioned, that's something that's really important, that can make or break your drawing of the hand, is recognizing that when it comes down to, like, especially making the fist, that it doesn't go straight. You know, there's a certain curvature to it, and as you could see in this example, it curves inwards. So it's not just straight down. You know, it's not just like this. You could see that it's at an angle when it comes to it, because the pinky is a lot smaller. It takes up less space, so it is going to have to come in more towards the palm. Same thing kind of goes with this finger as well in comparison to these two. So yeah, it takes that angle, and it goes inwards. The fingers are going inwards. It doesn't line up and just continue to go downwards. So here I'm paying attention to that and noticing how that's a really important detail. Another thing about paying attention to detail is it enriches your drawing. What's more interesting to look at? A hand that looks like a bunch of popsicle sticks on it, or something that really captures like these intricate lines, curvature to the lines as they form the finger, adding the knuckles there, adding these little creases that you see on the knuckles of the fingers. That becomes, it kind of calls the eye to attention. Like it says like, hey, check it out, there's like something else going on here. It's not as simple as it looks. Take a look at this. So paying attention to that draws the viewer's eye more to what's going on. But most importantly, aside from the viewer, yourself, you are also the viewer of your own work. It's a lot more fun to draw that and see good results. probably gonna finish those. Just gonna keep it here. I'm not gonna get too much into the detail. I am enjoying the pose. I am enjoying the lines as well. But I do want to move on to the next one. Similar, it's the hand holding a ribbon or a belt. But I'm going to approach it the same way. I'm going to start out with just basic shapes, large shapes to get the parameters down. Say, okay, I want it to be this big, and I want it to fit right in this section right here along with the other ones. Keeping it light, making these marks, you know, it's not like well, at this point it's a little bit different, but when you're starting out, you know, the question can be a little bit more discerning. Like, you're like, well, I don't know if this line that I'm going to make is going to be accurate, you know, but that's the benefit of sketching lightly, is it allows you to do that until you get the lines that you want, until it falls into place of where it needs to be. So let's say you draw out these big shapes, you set the parameters, it's this like solid block sort of. Now from there, you're going to want to divide the fingers, and you'll ask like, well, how long is it, like how wide is this finger supposed to be? And is it going to be short enough to make sure other fingers fit within this parameter, this solid area? But that's the whole idea of sketching lightly, is that it allows you to just play around with that. You don't need to dedicate yourself to any of it. If you make a mistake, you can easily erase. You know, it's not going to be like ingrained into the paper. You know, there's still a chance to save the drawing, basically. But just get comfortable with that approach. And the more and more you draw, the more you're going to get comfortable, or the more your hand-eye coordination is going to sink. You know, the more, whatever it is that you're looking at, whether it's in a reference or in your mind, you know, if you have something and you have it vividly pictured in your mind, your hand-eye coordination is going to be so well trained that you'll be able to draw it out the way that you're imagining it, or the way that you're seeing it in the reference. It's going to be accurate. But for now, you know, if you are just starting out, just get used to this approach, because it's going to be an approach that you're going to use even if you are, let's say, getting to the intermediate stage or even advanced stage. You know, there's going to be points where you're going to have a dance with the paper. You're going to be like, I don't have it perfectly visualized in my memory yet, and I want to just kind of play around on paper to see how it feels. You know, I might have just like a glint of an idea of like how it's going to look, but I'm not 100% sure. So you could just sketch around, you know, using the same approach, using this like light sort of light sketching, and then just form it and shape it little by little until it starts to look more and more accurate. So very useful, a very useful habit. And you want to teach yourself good habits. You know, you don't want to be unconscious of the lines that you're making. And it's probably more challenging as a beginner. You know, that's something that I say is a lot more challenging for people who are beginners, because they're so focused on other aspects, like getting things down, you know, looking at the reference and trying to make sure that the lines come out exactly, in that phase of like improving your hand-eye coordination. And that could take your attention away from the idea of, am I pressing too hard? Am I pressing too hard on the pencil and the paper? So I think beginners tend to make this mistake a lot more, of pressing really hard, not paying attention to that, not paying attention to how their hand feels. It could get to a point where you feel really stiff because you're just so focused on making sure that the lines that you're making are following what your eye wants it to make. You're really focused on, like, let's say making this curve and making sure that it comes out to be as right as you want it to be. So you're pressing hard as a way of controlling the medium, and really steadying your hand in a way. That's really what it is. You're trying to steady your hand by pressing harder on the paper. And it becomes a habit, you just depend on that more and more. So then you have to like work that out of your system, because as I mentioned, there's so many benefits to sketching lightly, and of being aware of how you're using your tool. There's multiple benefits to it, so you're gonna have to like work that out of your system. Instead, it's better to consider that as the most important thing prior to anything else. More important than making sure that this curve is going to be exactly as you want it. Every time you sit down to draw, always remind yourself while you're drawing, while you're warming up. This is one of the reasons why I suggest warm-up exercises of like drawing basic shapes, of practicing cross-hatching, practicing shading. This is something that's present here. This is a great opportunity to actually do that. Having this little sketchbook, doing these very simple exercises is great for outside scenarios. Let's say you're sitting and you're waiting for an appointment, whether it's a doctor's appointment or at school, you're waiting to see somebody or whatever it is. You're on a break of some sort, or let's say you're in a class that's extremely boring. You could just sit and practice this stuff. You could practice how to shade, how to create these basic shapes, while making it extremely important to draw lightly, to shape it, and to gradually increase the strength. Practice having control over the medium, and using these really simple exercises is the best way to go about it. You're not thinking hard. You're not thinking about anatomy, while you're trying to shade smoothly from highlight to shadow. You're not thinking about, proportions or anything. You're just creating a cylinder shape. You're just creating a circle and then shading it in, while the entire time making it the number one focus of drawing lightly. And then you could, if you get bored with that, if you're getting better and faster at doing all those things, take it to the next level. Draw the shape in different directions. Try to get that down while sketching lightly. Draw them next to each other. Have one in the foreground, one in the background, one larger, one smaller. Varying all that stuff, mixing it all together. All that is possible using those basic shapes. And then what you'll notice is, once you get better at that, constructing more complicated things is going to be a lot easier, because you're going to know, like, okay, well, first I'm going to lay down the entire structure of it, right? The same way as you saw me do it with the hands. You just draw these like big shapes. So these are your big shapes. You're using the cylinder shape basically for the torso. You're using the cylinder shape for the arms, both parts of the arms, the legs as well. You're using a circle for the first half of the head. All of it becomes a lot easier because you've done it so much. You've gone pages and pages of like playing around with these really simple exercises. So it really lends itself. All right, just continuing on with this. And there's also something beautiful about it, having that variation in lines, having the variation in the strength of those lines. There's something really cool about having like really light lines underneath the ones that you really chose, the ones that are darker. You know, there's something, I don't know. I guess I have lack of better words to describe it, really. It just looks really busy and diverse. You know, there's like so much going on, yet they're defined. So it's like a bit of a mix of like chaos and control, right? And I think that's what's kind of appealing. There's both present. Like really messy lines, all sorts, and then you define it more. You know, you have to give the hand some boundaries, otherwise it's just gonna be nothing. You know, it's just gonna be like part of the air. So because of its because of the mass that it forms, that would represent more order, right? And the chaotic lines in between represent the chaos. So it is coming close to that time, ladies and gents, where I'm gonna take a 5-minute break. And I'm gonna end the stream for drawing basics for tonight, and I'm gonna move on to the next stream, which is gonna be the project stream. I'm gonna be doing some digital painting. It's something that I haven't done in a while, and I really do enjoy it. I'm still, you know, I might continue it next week. I might not. I might actually just start a new project from my imagination, like you guys have been seeing me for the previous stream. Kind of excited about that too. Ooh, this might not be a good place for it. So I'm gonna sketch it out real quick. Yeah, I might just start working on something else from my imagination. But tonight, that's gonna be more digital painting. It's a different approach. It's not the same as drawing. You know, there are similarities, of course, without a doubt. But the feel of it, you know, how you're creating, like for instance, in this case, I'm using lines to create these big shapes. Whereas when it comes to painting, you're filling in solid blocks. You know, the brush isn't as fine. I mean, of course, you could take the same approach and you can use a really thin brush and create the same sort of technique. But I personally, the way I like doing it is by actually using like the brush and making these really thick blocks, basically. And you'll notice that when I bring it up for you guys as examples, that are just using these like blotchy sort of shapes to fill in or to make placeholders for me to like go back in and start putting in detail. So it's slightly a different approach. It still requires hand-eye coordination. It still requires attention to detail. It's just how you go about it is slightly different. So that's coming up next. It's a digital painting of a favorite painter of mine named Jacques-Louis David. You guys could Google his name. Check out a lot of his work. All of them are incredible. You know, there's like, it feels like it's more real than realism. It's kind of hard to explain. But you guys will also see a preview of the painting, the painting that I'm going to be working off of. So you'll see what I mean when I say that. At least I hope you guys notice it the same way. There are a lot of paintings that kind of have that, despite them not actually being hyper-realistic. You know, there's some quality about them that breathes life into them. You know, whether it's just them capturing a glance, you know. That's what makes the painting so unique. Like, you look at some of Van Gogh's paintings and that quality is present. You know, they're not realistic, but the way they're rendered, you know, the brush strokes that were used, the colors that were used, all of it together. You know, that's the beautiful thing about art and painting is that it's the touch of the artist. You know, it's the brush strokes, that very hand, and the hand-eye coordination of each and every painter and artist that makes the painting so unique. You know, you could have the same subject present, but the way each painter or artist draws it is going to be very individualistic, which I think is so cool. Like, that's one of the most awesome things about looking at other people's art. You know, aside from doing it, I absolutely love seeing that in other people. Like, when I was taking life drawing sessions, like, I would go in, I would pay a little bit of money and sit and draw from a live model. I would go around and see how other people drew the model. And it was just so cool to see other people and their line work, you know, and how it differs from one person to another, even though it's the same subject. It's a lot of fun. All right, everybody, I'm going to take that 5-minute break, and I'll be back for the project stream. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys enjoy this content, just remember to hit that like and subscribe button. They're greatly appreciated. That helps the stream and reaches out to a wider audience. All right, everyone, I'll see you in the next stream. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Or for those of you who are just tuning in for the very first time, welcome to the Art Lounge Alley. This is project part 76, and I am your host, who's going to continue working on this project right here. Now, that's not my painting. That is a painting done by Jacques-Louis David. He's a French painter back during the French Revolution, I believe. An amazing painter, and what this painting is showing is of Socrates. He's a Greek philosopher. He's there with Plato and the people that followed him, basically at his deathbed, literally, being handed hemlock, which is a poison. And the story goes that he was basically challenging everybody and questioning their knowledge to a point where some people just didn't know what's up or down. You know, that's where the Socratic method comes from, just questioning everything. And basically what he came to understand is that a lot of times people are just bullshitting. Like, they don't really know what they're talking about. They're pretending, or they're just making things up. And through that line of questioning, he arrived at truths on all sorts of situations, not just about other people, but just the nature of existence and politics and all sorts of stuff. You know, that opening up that dialogue and presenting questions, asking questions, presenting theories in forms of questions, you know, all of that made the conversations very fruitful. And some people, it was really irritating because that shook their level of authority, right? Of this ongoing fascist sort of culture that's been going on ever since then, you know. And of course that fascist culture ended up giving him an ultimatum, and it came from basically politicians of that time who were pissed off that he was actually like outwitting and presenting to be way more knowledgeable than a lot of people. But he contradicted it by saying, you know, the thing I know most is that I don't know anything. And, you know, just through that, even that would irritate other people. And basically what these politicians would tell him is that you either stop doing this, you either stop challenging people, either stop questioning all this stuff, stop questioning authority and things that are law and that we need people to abide by, or we give you the death penalty. And he said, well, you know what, fuck you, I'm not gonna stop questioning life, because life not worth questioning isn't life living at all. So he was pissed about it. He didn't want that. And it was a really important point, I'm going to say, in human development, in the development of pretty much anything. Without questions, there wouldn't be science. You know, if people never questioned what happens with the weather, you know, why does this happen? You know, why does the weather happen? Where does it come from? You know, noticing all these little things and then questioning to find out the very nature of them, we wouldn't be where we are today. Technology wouldn't have advanced to the same level as it has today. So it was an incredibly pivotal point in human history, and he was at the forefront of it. You know, he was basically representing this idea that we have to question everything as much as possible to arrive at truth. And to make that even more clear, to imprint this important concept, he decided to go along with death. He said, I'm gonna drink hemlock then. You know, that's if you guys are telling me that I can't question life, then yeah, that's not a life worth living. It's just being shackled to bullshit, basically. And this is what you're seeing right now. This is basically him stating that life unquestioned is a life not worth living at all. All right, so that's enough about that. For those of you who are just tuning in, I'm going to show you guys how far I've gotten, which isn't very far at all. For those of you who tuned in from the previous stream, I was talking about how I was using large shapes and how the process is different from it's different from drawing. With drawing, you're using thin lines to define the barriers of the subject of whatever it is. Let's say if it's just this right here, you're using the lines and you're creating the external barriers to know, okay, I have to keep it within this in order for it to come out right. Whereas with painting, you're doing, as you could see, like I'm just using large shapes, large masses of paint to define the areas, to define those parameters. But it still requires attention to detail. It still requires all the tools that you use when it comes to drawing in order to get accurate results. So I'm continuing on today. I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this because it really is a lot, you know. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of detail. And I would kind of rather develop more work from my imagination. Like, this is more of a study. This is just a way of improving drawing, you know, getting better at drawing. And it's not something I'm going to be like, you know, using as my portfolio and being like, you know, it's not my work. I would much rather develop my own work, my own ideas, and get better at that. But I thought it would be fun just to switch things up, show you guys something different, and just talk about that. And it is a pleasant experience. I really do enjoy it. You know, this is something that I talk about very frequently. If you're working on something, whether it's painting, drawing, playing music, enjoy the process. You know, just be in the moment and feel things out. Focus on that. There's like so much going on in that moment, as opposed to, you know, people getting caught up in results. Or focusing on how other people are perceiving them in the moment. Focusing on people's reactions or whatever. Now, I'm not saying it's completely wrong to do it. You obviously want to connect with your audience. But I think first and foremost, you should be connecting with the process. That's why you chose it. You know, that's why you're doing it. Because you really dig whatever it is. I kind of choose this approach for drawing as well sometimes. Like when it comes to coloring, what's time saving is to use like the lasso tool, and you like select the areas a lot quicker as opposed to like using the brush and like, you know, coloring around, you know, filling up certain areas, so on and so forth. what the technique usually that's done by a lot of people is using that lasso tool and just making the selection, filling it in, moving on to the next section, so on and so forth. But for me, I kind of avoid that, not because it's good or bad or whatever. It's just I really enjoy filling it in as if though I'm painting, and just like really, and you guys will notice that if you go back to any of the other projects that I've been doing on stream. When it comes to coloring, I don't really use the lasso tool as much. It's just something that I do once in a while. I want to get faster and better at that, and have that be the approach. That lends itself to the traditional work as well. When you guys are seeing me do like figure drawing basics or coloring comics or drawing comics, like I believe practicing it lends itself to all those streams as well, or those techniques. Okay, so this is a really crucial stage because I'm setting up, basically, I'm making sure that everything is in proper relation to one another. For example, this little step that's underneath Socrates' foot, how far is that step from the chains that are on the bottom, and how far are the chains from the foot of one of his followers that's handing him the hemlock. So I have to make sure that's accurate, because the moment I start going into detail, I want to avoid doing any surgical work, like where I'm like cutting things using the lasso tool, pasting them, shrinking them, or whatever. I want to get as good as basically these painters who didn't have any of those tools. This is like an old painting from, I'm going to say, late 1700s. And they didn't have that. They just were so good at figuring this stuff out without these guides, without these like little helpful tools. Which just says how impeccable they were at the medium, at painting especially. Like painting is very difficult, I'm going to say. Which shouldn't deter you guys from trying. That's part of like all the processes, is challenging yourself and taking things to the next level. And the only way you do that is by taking things that are intimidating. If you suck at drawing hands, don't hide them. Don't avoid practicing them. Just dive head on and draw them as much as possible until you get really good. That's really key to improving, to leveling up. But yeah, there's like so much that goes into oil painting. The mediums, the brushes that you're using, how to use them properly. Light source, because unlike digital, you're always at the same light source. There's no difference in the light source. Whereas if you're painting in your room, depending on what day it is, what kind of sunlight you're getting, some days it's a little bit dark, some days it's a little bit light. That changes how you're going to see the colors that you mix. Huge difference. That's something that I struggled with when I was younger and I was doing oil painting. I spent 2-3 days dealing with mixing colors because I didn't recognize a subtle difference in the room, in my room, depending on light, is going to change skin color from looking really dull to looking really bright. Like the orange in natural light when it's sunny outside looks more vibrant, and then it instantly dulls out if it's, let's say, a cloudy day. So I would wake up, I would sit down, I would start painting, and I'm like, was I just not seeing this? Was this something to do with drying? It's dried and now it took on like a more dull color. And I would think it has something to do with the medium, like linseed oil or something. And I would just sit there and I'm like, okay, maybe today I'm going to have a better day. And I would spend time figuring that out and, you know, mixing the colors, getting it right, like getting it to look right. Then next day I'd wake up and it's a different day and the light is different. And then again, I'm like, oh, what is this? You know, what's going on here? So it took me some time to really realize that. And a lot of this stuff I taught myself. Like, I didn't take any classes. So if I did take classes, it would probably have revealed that a lot sooner. You know, the teacher would have talked about that. They would have said, like, you know, pay attention to your light source. That is incredibly important in making sure that the drawing comes out right. Or the colors that you're using, you're mixing, are coming out accurate. But yeah, you know, so just with that, using brushes, mixing is a whole other technique to learn. Whereas with digital, you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. You know, like, I'm mixing colors right now. I'm not switching brushes. I'm not using linseed oil or turpentine to clean the brush or to dilute the color and make sure that it's just the right amount. Because if you use too much of linseed oil, it's going to have a different effect on the colors. You know, the colors are going to be different. How it's applied on the canvas is going to be different. It might absorb it faster because it's so wet. Also, things like gesso. You want to make sure that you apply that to the canvas before you start painting, so that the oil doesn't seep into the canvas, because the canvas is made out of linen, basically. You know, it's a cloth that's stretched onto wooden planks, basically. So, you know, you put on the gesso so that way colors don't absorb into that cloth incredibly fast. So that's another thing. Like, there are all these things that really play into it, but it's still so much fun because how it feels. Like, that's something that digital art isn't going to emulate, you know, unless somehow they're going to make it possible for you to feel paint, you know, that wet texture on canvas, and actually feeling the paint spread through the canvas as you make the brush stroke. I don't see that really happening. You know, I would love to, because that's awesome. Like, how innovative people would have to be in order to create that. They are coming close in other ways. Like, they've developed brushes, basically, that, like, actual brushes. Like, I'm using a Wacom pen, right, for the tablet, but substitute that pen with a brush, basically, and the bristles have these receptors that work with the tablet. So when you make a stroke, it really does mimic a brush, basically. It's pretty incredible. I'm pretty sure it's like still, I'm gonna say it's still in the beginning phases, but very cool. Like, it's a cool experience to have it. It's just that you can't feel any wet medium on there. Like, you'll feel the brush, you know, spreading the bristles as you press down on the canvas, but there's nothing in there. You know, it's just the feeling of the brush. So again, you know, traditional approach has something very unique about it that digital cannot substitute. And that's what like, that experience is what makes it so cool. And sometimes it's just fun to fuss around this kind of stuff, you know. It's like, it is kind of like talking shop a bit. You know, you talk about your experience using linseed oil as opposed to a different one, because linseed oil isn't the only type. There's other ones that have like more of a glossy finish or more of a matte finish. So all those different types of mediums have different effects. But there's a lot to it. You have to spend money, you know, because you eventually run out of oils, you will have to use these medium, like you'll have to buy the gesso, you have to buy the canvas, brushes get ruined after a while. So it is, as far as money goes, it is more expensive than as opposed to, just working digitally. You don't have to worry about that. You just have to buy the, you got to buy the software. I'm going to say most people already have a computer, and nowadays they've caught up. I'm going to say most computers caught up to system requirements. Like I remember back in the day, there were just some computers that you could buy that just wouldn't be able to handle robust applications. They were cheaper, but now even the cheapest, I'm going to say the cheapest computer can handle these applications. Just a matter of like, if you're going to use it for gaming or really complicated software, I'm going to say like, I don't know, maybe After Effects is very demanding. I don't know, I'm getting carried away with detail here, whereas I should still be focusing on space. So for example, the space between Socrates' foot and the guy that's sitting next to him, like with his hand on Socrates' leg. Like what is that space? And focusing to make sure it's very accurate. I don't know. Still debating on like what's the right approach. Should I do that? Should I measure out all these perfect spaces? Or should I just get as close as possible and start from somewhere? Like how I kind of was approaching Plato. I started out with Plato. As you guys could see, his face is a lot more developed. And just work from him towards all the way to the left. I think that's probably the most sensible approach. And that way I'm not like hopping around nonstop. I did have to do a little bit of surgery. His head was bigger than the rest of the body. So it was a question of changing the entire body to suit the size of his head or shrinking down his head. And I chose the latter. It's more sensible to do that than to do all of that correction. That's a lot of correction there. But yeah, one of the other reasons I chose this painting is because I believe it'll help me level up more. There's just so much going on over there. There's so many lines, like a line variation, the colors, like paying attention to all that stuff, and making those line decisions, creating those lines. I believe is going to help me take my hand-eye coordination to the next level, improve my attention to detail, improve my line work, like create more variation to the stroke of the brush. Oh, another key difference is between drawing and, painting and digital painting is I'm not using multiple brushes here. like changing the size of the brush is just a click away. I'm just downsizing the cursor. Whereas when it comes to painting traditionally, you got to have like all these different type of brushes. Are you gonna constantly wash off the brush? Like some painters have like an entire bucket full of brushes, and each brush has a designated color. So if you're working on a skin color, that's one brush. If you're working on his coat, that's another brush. And they're all just set aside. So whenever you're ready to work on it, instead of having to clean the brush, mix the color again, you just pick up that brush that you used for it. Or you could just wash it out and clean it a little bit and then use the right color. So there's like another approach. Like there's all these other things that you have to like think about, kind of like, how do I want to work? Do I want to do that? Or is it better to have like a brush designated for specific colors? And I'm probably going to pick it up much later, when I'm older, or when I have like a lot of time to myself, when I don't have like multiple projects going on, and just focus on painting, not have to like rush things and all that. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be a lot of fun. Learning something again, learning a new thing yet again. Getting carried away by that process. And that's something that I was talking about in a previous stream, just getting used to the challenge, getting used to sucking, getting bad results, and not being disheartened by them. Just accepting that as the process for learning, because that opens up your it becomes fun. It becomes fun learning and seeing results, as opposed to just constantly focusing and being like, oh, I'm not good, I'm not getting better, or this didn't come out right, and getting really carried away by that. And a lot of people do. Like, I think a lot of people just are a little bit too easily disheartened. But if you could master that, if you could get over that, if you could get comfortable with bad results, with rejection of your own work, or from your own work rather, you'll excel a lot faster. You won't pay attention to that. That's not going to be your focus. Your focus is going to be, I'm going to sit down next day and really get it down even more. Really try to capture this, that, and the other. And not only because you want to get better, but because you just like it. You like the idea of being able to capture what you're looking for. So if you're like looking to get really good at drawing hands, or you're like trying to improve that, you're excited by the opportunity to do that. Like, I'm excited by this because I really want to see where this is going to get to, by the time I really start getting further and further along. It's a building block. It's not like tomorrow I'm going to have to start doing this all over again. Whatever I do today is already more than I did yesterday, and so on and so forth and so forth. I'm little by little completing it. So I'm just kind of curious, like, as I continue on with this, what is it going to look like? What's it going to look like in 2 weeks? And what's it going to look like in 3 weeks? So on and so forth. Like, how is that going to affect my, as I mentioned, like my drawing? And to be honest, I am feeling pretty good when I sit down and I start working with the pencil. Like, I'm feeling really comfortable with it. It feels nice to make certain lines. There's a little bit more ease to it. I'm going to say the results seem to be smoother. Still plenty more to go, but I am recognizing that little bit of difference. I want to say sometimes noticing improvement is kind of like watching your hair grow. It just, after 2 weeks, all of a sudden your hair is longer, much longer. But the day before, you didn't notice how it got longer, right? The day after that, you didn't notice how it got longer. It just, after 2 weeks, you look at yourself and you realize, like, I need a haircut or something, or I need to do something with all this hair. That's kind of like how improvement works when it comes to, I'm going to say, about a lot of things. Like, let's say you really you really like playing chess. You're going to see results, or you're going to notice it the same way you're noticing your hair grow. It's very incremental, but it is getting better. Same thing with like playing an instrument, or painting or drawing or whatever. I think that's just like the best analogy to that. People want to see like quick results. It's like expecting to see your hair grow in one day, or expecting to notice how your hair grows in like a day or something. It's very difficult. I'm sure if you really paid attention to it and you figured out some sort of approach, you will. But yeah, it's not worth it. The important thing is knowing that, it's getting there. All right, how do I feel? I'm trying to see, like, how do I feel about Play-Doh in general? Like, I think here I'm gonna need to give it a little bit more of a natural fold. The fold looks a bit stiff. And also, it seems like this guy's drapery is supposed to come down, which means the shadow is a little bit further out. I don't think there's going to be a point where until everything has gotten a lot of work, until everything has been defined a lot more, I'm gonna keep adjusting things little by little. And that's the other thing too, like when it came to like oil painting, having to adjust things was also laborious. Like there's no cutting tool. You can't just, shrink something down by like dragging corners to the size that you wanted. You had to like erase things. You had to use turpentine or mineral spirits and just like give it a good wipe down the area that you didn't like and start all over, basically. Like it wasn't as easy to do it. So very challenging stuff. I'm going to say it's something that if you got free time, it's a good way to learn, right? Like let's say if you're not paying, well, even if let's say if you have like a job, right? Regular job, you come home, you dedicate like 2 hours, which is pretty much all the hours that you have left afterwards. You will see results. Little by little. Very little by little, I'm going to say. Because it just requires so much of your time and focus. And learning all these tools. But I'm going to say if you really want to see some great improvement, it's probably something you should pick up when you're in your teens. Getting better and better. And then in your 20s, you could start like focusing on creating content that you're going to exhibit or you're going to sell and stuff like that. So like you could spend your teen years learning the craft, learning what's necessary to do it, because you have so much time. When you're younger, you got all this time. You don't have to worry about bills. In this shit economy that we're living in right now, where a bunch of Nazis are making it much worse for everybody. We're absolutely in a class war right now. This is absolutely a class war. And I think more and more people have to recognize how toxic that is. And how it's just keeping us going in the same pattern over and over and over again. The same story. Like this is the same repeating story as in the 20s and 30s. Just an ongoing thing. Greed has been around for centuries. And we're dealing with a lot of corruption. And also recognizing the limitation of time, just with the pandemic and how people were uncertain, like what's going to happen? Are we all going to just die from this? And just kind of recognizing how things are limited, and then having to spend all that time, that limited time, serving somebody else and making their life much better while they do, we're basically holding up the economy and improving their lives while doing absolutely nothing to improve our lives. It's just not a sustainable system, and I think more and more people should wake up to that and demand their life to be improved. That's the entire point of politics. It's the entire point of the government and political structure and the justice system and all that is to uphold what is right. That's why we elect people. It's not like they're like, look, we're going to exploit you. We're going to use up all of your hard work. We're going to take all your taxes. We're going to put it in our pockets. And we're going to make our friends more rich. Vote us in. Vote us into the White House. We're going to do all those things. No, they promise the opposite. They talk about how they're going to improve your life, that once they're elected, they're going to improve the district and yada, 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 basically making everybody think that they're going to do something and they're going to do their job. So again, it's just a reminder how their job isn't to exploit people, isn't to make people's lives miserable. It's the opposite. But they get in and they turn to corruption. They just do a complete opposite. And people have to hold them accountable for that. And also just demand change. Kick those people out that are making things worse. Just imagine what it would be like if you worked 5 hours per day. Like, what would your day be like? You would wake up, you'd go to work, you'd come back at 2 p.m., right? 9, 10, 11, 12, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1. Right? Or 2 p.m. you would end your work. By the time you get home, it's 3 o'clock. 3 p.m. you would be back at home. And you would have the rest of your day to be able to do other stuff. It's absolutely possible, because what they would do is they would have to hire more people, right? And that question of like, oh, the economy, how many jobs were added, blah, 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 that wouldn't be the case anymore. It would skyrocket because there would be more people necessary in each company to keep things going past 2 p.m. They have to hire another group of people that are going to go for another 5 hours. So businesses would actually stay open later, because 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 11 p.m. There would be 3 shifts within a day for a business to stay open. 3 shifts. And each person would only have to work 5 hours in each of those shifts. It's absolutely possible. Like, back in the day, back in like the 1800s, people were working 11 to 13 hours. And then they demanded for it to be 8 hours. And of course, at the time, people were like, oh, it's going to shut down the economy. Oh, that's impossible. That's not going to work. Making up all sorts of bullshit, basically. And look what happened. Did everything collapse? No. They're making trillions now. Trillions of dollars. So what I'm saying is that it's absolutely possible to reduce it to 5 hours. They're not going to be losing anything. In fact, they're going to be probably making more because businesses are open later. But they don't want that, because that's going to make you less dependent on them. That's going to make them do more work to get your vote from them. So it's purposely done this way for them to continue to exploit people, to exploit taxes, and to create that dependency. It's purely greed-based. It's why they don't pay teachers more, because they want stupid people. They want you to buy their stupid products, their wasteful products that create landfills. The stuff that they're selling that's like on the go because you got to work all day. Just things that are creating all sorts of environmental disasters, all that stuff that's being dumped in the water. Because again, they're like, hey, do we do this officially? Or do we just dump all this stuff down and like save ourselves money and not have to like go through all these other businesses that are going to charge us X, Y, and Z? No, we're going to just dump it in the water instead and avoid those fees. more profits. This is how capitalism is just wrecking everything, you know, from your life to the economy to the environment. It just perpetuates that sick greed, you know, that sickness of constantly wanting more and more and more. It's like gambling. It's something that I often say as an example. When you gamble, you win, you want more of it. It's like this feedback loop. It makes you feel like things are happening, and you get the sense of importance or whatever, and it's just like this high basically that starts to develop. Same thing with this, you know, the more you get it, the more you want of it. It's like drugs and alcohol, right? That's like the same sort of thing that happens. People get so stuck in those experiences that they want more, to be in those experiences more and more and more. If there is no economy, there is no profits, there's no money. You know, if people start to like recognize how much power they have over these companies, which is why right now they're doing everything they can to make things more miserable, because they don't want people to realize that. They're just trying to put everybody down before it gets to that point. We could create a lot of change. I mean, that's what happened back in the 1800s. That's how it changed from 11 to 13 hours to 8 hours, because people were like, hey, if you're not going to give this to us, we're going to shut down the economy. And that's exactly what they did. Like within a week, the economy collapsed. Like businesses just weren't making any money. People weren't. Nothing. And everything fell apart. So if we want to see change, that's how it has to happen. There's absolutely no way any of these politicians are going to do that. Even progressives or whatever, like people who are looking out for the people, supposedly, are either silenced or they're not acknowledging like one of the most important things that we need. Like they'll list all this other stuff. They'll talk about, oh, this is the problem. But they're not listing one of the most crucial things about making the economy and everybody's lives better is getting paid more, is having more time to themselves. Like that's not something that they're putting on their list whenever they talk about this stuff. Like read about, there's only a few, like Bernie Sanders always brings it up, rotates it, you know, as a topic that needs to be at the forefront. But other ones, they don't talk about that. They're not saying, look, we really have to push for people to be able to make money that allows them to save, that allows them to also gain profits, that gives them time to actually spend with their family, time for them to enjoy themselves. They don't talk about that. They want you working. They want you to be miserable, you know, because that misery also means you're going to go shop to make yourself feel better. And they got their hands in the pockets of all these different companies that tell them like, hey, if you keep this as status quo, we'll pay you more. You know, so all that, just greed, more greed, you know, this entire thing. So we've been stagnating ever since. You know, it just produced more crap and put people in this like zombie mode. No interesting innovations, no real huge change. I mean, we're going back in terms of like values. We got Nazis running around. Women are considered to be second-class citizens. Again. No, it's just a bunch of bullshit. So we can't depend. What I'm saying is we can't depend on politicians to do anything. We have to, as they did in that time, in that time period, they took matters into their own hands. They started creating protests and started making demands. saying, listen, we want this, and until we get this, until we get these 5 hours max and livable wages, better education systems, teachers getting paid excellent, you know, all these things, we got to make those demands while the time is right and not back down until it's happening. I mean, look at what Iran is doing. It's amazing. Incredibly oppressed nation. Like, there's even worse things going on. Like, women can't even walk down the street without having their face covered all day. You know, because the men just can't control themselves. They're just too basic, and they're gonna feel emotions that are gonna make them dangerous. Like, that's what basically they're saying. Like, we're just too stupid. We can't control ourselves. You have to cover yourself up. Like, we're not gonna change how kids are taught. We're not gonna change the sort of repercussions or improve the culture so that men don't act like basic idiots. You know, like basically like animals. No, we're gonna make women cover themselves up. It's ridiculous. But yeah, power to them. I'm really glad that they're pushing for more freedom for themselves. But yeah, look at that. An incredibly oppressive nation. Yet they're protesting for like 2 months now, I'm gonna say. I don't know if it's 3 months. It's been 2 months. And they're doing it. And the fact that you know, there's a lot of concern going on over there means it's working. You know, the fact that the people are getting more and more pissed and like doing all these crackdowns or whatever, it's because it's effective. It's because it's actually doing something. So we got to pick it up, man. Like, we got to start demanding these changes and like take back our lives, basically. Take back our happiness, as opposed to just dedicating it to a bunch of sick, greedy people who are getting a kick out of this. Like, again, just the fact that during the pandemic, they were just like, nope, march to your death. Go catch this virus. We need our annual profits need to be at our expected predictions. Like, you're fucking crazy. It's so crazy. I still, like, when that happened, I was incredibly furious. It was so repulsive, like, just to see that. And it's something that I often say. It's like, what's the difference between a Nazi telling you to march into a gas chamber and that? It's even worse because they're not even there. They're like, people are so conditioned that they just did it. You know, the economy was so shit and pay was so shit that people were like, well, what am I going to do? I got to go into work. And they would go catch this virus, spread it more, you know, and that's not just one person. This is like millions of people going around, catching it and spreading it to more people in their neighborhood, in their apartments, to their kids. The kids go to school, they spread it to other kids. Those kids go back home, they spread it to their parents. Disaster. And what do they say? Oh, who cares? Go out there and keep making us profits. That's Nazi values. That's sociopathic, crazy people. They don't even care about the economy. And then they talk about America, you know, or like, oh, this is our nation. You don't give a shit about the nation. You wanted everybody to like basically catch a killer disease so you can make more money. Tell me that's not a sickness. Tell me that's not as crazy as somebody who's like, you know, becomes a gambling addict and like ends up losing everything and like selling all sorts of stuff and yeah, it's absolutely insane. It's unsustainable. And I think that, again, just imagine what your day, just take time and picture out your day if you only worked 5 hours. It's absolutely possible. And as I mentioned, it would just create more jobs. And people would spend less time bullshitting because all they're working 5 hours, they still have energy, whereas 8 hours burns people out. You know, that's that mark that starts to hit where people are just like burnt out or just like ready to like call it quits. So it's just enough before people are just like, forget it, man, this is ridiculous. That's how well this machine is oiled. Like, all this stuff, systematic, created by fascists. Capitalist fascists, same thing. One hand feeds the other. Man, I really got on it. I was talking about painting and how you would need a lot of time to get better at it. And the best time to do it is when you're younger, because you don't have much time to learn it if you're not at that age. And why? Because of all these things I just mentioned. How ridiculous is that? You're incapable of learning something so cool and fun and interesting and rewarding because of this sociopathic greed and arrogance. You know, really arrogant, crazy fucking people. So yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, we gotta change things up, and we really gotta start working towards a different sort of future. This is bullshit. Previous generation didn't want to do shit about it. They just conformed to more fascist behavior, and this is why it's exploding. Now, it's been years of preparation for that. They conditioned people, and yeah, the previous generation, they were just like, oh, I guess so. I guess that's how things are now. Like, the most common apathetic response. And it all blew over. I mean, the pandemic didn't happen overnight. It was years. Years and years and years. Anyways, everybody, that is my rant for the night. Come back for it tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow, same time and place. I'm going to be doing the same. It's going to be Figure Drawing Basics at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then the project stream at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But actually, I was lying. It's not going to be the same, because tomorrow is going to be the special stream. I'm going to be continuing on talking about more painting, actually. And it's going to be focused on painting. I might have some little things to say here and there on the side, but predominantly I'm going to be focusing on talking about J.C. Leyendecker, another huge influence on Gil Elfgren. So this is going to be Gil Elfgren Part 7, and that's tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys are going to be seeing that instead of me painting more of this. So make sure you tune in then. It's going to be exciting. I'm going to have a blast talking about more of his work. Sharing with you guys like the beautiful paintings and just completely mesmerizing amount of just mesmerizing work. You know, that's all I can say about it, and you guys will hear more about it tomorrow. So yeah, tune in then, and if you guys enjoy this content, as always, just remember to hit that like and subscribe button. They're both very helpful. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll see you tomorrow.